Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's Writers Wednesday show. So every second Wednesday, we get to chat with our friends from Books-Fluent, and they're an amazing company. If you're an author, check them out. But you know, we're your hosts, Nancy and Lisa. And so every second Wednesday, we chat with authors. And today we're welcoming Kevin Moore, joining us to talk about his paranormal-thriller. It's spiritual, it's religious, it's got a little bit of, actually, you just cannot peg it into one place.
No.
And that's what, Nancy, you've been reading Book of Souls is the name of the book, and it's out now through Books-Fluent. So check out kevinmoorepublishing.com or get it from your favorite place. But welcome, Kevin. How are you?
I'm great. Nice to be here.
Yeah,
Good.
nice to have you here, and excited. Your book is out when this is airing. It's out and about for everyone. So this is kind of like ties into true life for you. And this is Book of Souls is part one, and then you have a second part. Like it's like a duo going out.
Right. The second book is the Book of Demons, and then that'll be out
Nice.
October 11th.
I
2020.
want it.
October.
I want it.
Good.
I want it. I want it.
Yeah, we'll
Nancy's-
send it to you. Definitely.
Thank you.
Nancy's just a few pages away from closing the book, and we made her behave.
Oh,
You're not allowed to
man.
finish it all the way to the end because she's spoiler, but man, it sounds like it's a really interesting book from what Nancy's saying and reading, the press on it, and you're already getting good, reviews and everything. But this is something that really comes from real life, right? This story.
Yes, absolutely. So the original idea was, Nancy, as you know, there's the shadow people, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
And so I am a lucid dreamer, and
Mhm.
I've been doing it for years. I did it as a kid, only I didn't know what it was.
Mhm.
And then I had these 3 lucid dreams in a row, and they were about the shadow people, and they were trying to get my son, Matthew. And so I kept asking them, what do you want? And they said, him. And then about a month after I had these dreams, he ended up in the hospital in emergency, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. He had a trach, his lung collapsed, he got sepsis, he ended up in intensive care.
Wow.
And I felt like the dreams were warnings to me to be prepared that, I don't know if you want to say it was death knocking on the door, because he was at death's door, but him and I, Matthew is also autistic. So, which we'll see, Nancy, in the second book, I do bring a character that's nonverbal. So Matthew doesn't speak. So we were going through this amazing, frightening, scary experience, but I felt like the dreams had warned me. So him and I slept with him every night for just about a month in the hospital until he got out. And that was 7 years ago. So he's doing great. So I felt like I needed to write it, and I wrote it as a short story with just the shadow people. And that's the Stevie part of it, when he's, in his 40s. And then my wife goes, no, you should write this as a novel. And I thought, I'm not sure I could write the novel out of it. But then that's when all the fun started, because then I could bring in ghosts and demons and some of the other stuff from my past. And
wow.
That's why it comes across so real. And I mean, it's for that kind of style of writing, that kind of genre of book, it's really difficult to come across as real. And you've mastered that. I will tell you that.
Thank you.
Like, you can't even put it down.
Nancy,
I love hearing that.
She was like, this is some freaky stuff. And
Yeah, I know, but I'm already in my mind seeing actors in movies, and I'm like, oh, this could be this one. And then I'm thinking of different actors, like Peter Lorre has to be a shadow. He has to be in there.
Well, funny that you mentioned Peter Lorre, because the names of the characters, a couple of the characters, are modes to Peter Lorre.
No way.
Sidney Greenstreet. So I took their real names, Peter Cairo from the Maltese
Oh,
Falcon.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then Casper Greenstreet is Sydney Greenstreet. Because
Okay.
I
Oh.
love those kinds of characters that are, there's always something kind of creepy going on behind the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Peter
Wow.
Lorre would be going, it's the shadows.
Oh yeah, but we have Steve Schneickert's our Hollywood historian, and he's done a whole podcast we air it every Halloween,
Yeah.
and it's all about the hand
The hand.
and the tingler. He does the hand, the tingler. He does all these crazy things, and it's like, no way. When you listen to it, and he even does the sound effects, and
That's great.
dude, no way. So that's a trip. He's gonna
Nancy,
trip
I'm
out
glad
to
you picked
listen
that
to
up.
this.
Yeah,
gonna have to
no,
read
I'm
this
into
now.
this, man. I want the second book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's done and it's ready for, it should be, I think we're going to proofread it in a week.
Oh wow,
So
this
it's ready.
is excellent.
Cool.
This
Yeah,
is
it's ready for
excellent.
prime.
Yeah.
So, it's so funny because I told a friend, she was texting me right before, and I said, I got to go. I've got an interview with the ghost guy. And I said, and when I say the ghost guy, I mean the ghost guy. So I want to get into this whole, lucid dreaming. Nancy and I have had all kinds of interesting experiences through our lives. And so to us, we don't have this, it doesn't occur thing. We know things happen, and then there's people who lie about it and get over the top weird. We understand the woo-woo side and the balance, but there real things do happen, and so we're very familiar with that. But the dreaming to me is very interesting, and I wanted to just kind of touch on that before we go further and talk about ghosts. And I think it's all connected. Lucid dreaming, what does that mean? For those listening that are going, well, I have weird dreams and I always forget. And, I think dreaming is actually, we are in another dimension that's still connected in some way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's like, in the book, I tried to tie that in as like, am I dreaming now or am I dreaming while I'm awake?
Yeah.
And so that's like where a lot of the duality comes in. But for me, lucid dreaming, like I didn't even know what it was when I first started doing it as a kid. And I would, like if I told my mother it, she would be like, okay, yeah, but that's a dream. But as I got older, I have lost a lot of people over the years, people from high school. I lost my mother when I was a teenager. I've lost siblings. And what would happen was they would show up in a dream. And I would always think,
wow,
well, they're here to visit me, and so I started to explore it a little bit more. And I was told, ask questions. So like when somebody would come that had passed away, like I had a girlfriend in high school who died when she was in her 30s. And so I was dreaming about her one night, and I remembered to ask the question, and I said, well, wait a minute, you're dead. And she said, yeah, I am, but I'm okay. And then a lot of years later, she brought back one of my favorite pets that she never knew. And she was in my dream, and she was like, oh, I'm here for a visit, but I have a surprise for you. I have a gift. And I said, oh, what is it? And she brought out this cat, Spanky, that I loved in my dream. Now, she never met the cat, didn't know the cat. So it's that kind of thing with lucid dreaming where you actually are talking to people that have passed away, and you're asking them questions. And that's happened to me quite a bit. Like I have, my sister passed away suddenly about 5 years ago. And she was struggling in life, and had a lot of relationships that hadn't been, smoothed out. And she kept coming to me in my dreams. And I said, well, why haven't you moved on? Like, why aren't you with mommy or daddy or Michael? Or like, why are you still here? And she was like, there's things I have to work out on this side that I have not finished yet. And one of them was with her daughter. And then she would give me a note to give to her daughter. And
wow.
Yeah. So that's my experience with lucid dreaming, which is why I love it, because anybody can do it. You just,
tap in.
Yeah, you just tap in, and you remember to start asking questions.
Well, it's interesting because, reading through everything, and you talk about like everybody is like dust particles, and Nancy and I talk about this because we travel full time. And if you circle back around a place, It doesn't really matter about how many years. There's a connection, even if it's
Mhm.
changed 100%, which it never does. You feel a sense of place of who you were then. So I've always called this deja vu dust. And sometimes you'll go into a place and and there's deja vu. We
You
go
know
through
you've
it
been there.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
That
Mhm.
you've been there, and I go, okay, that's weird, but I'm comfy with it. But I've always called it dust. Like we leave something that to our naked eye we don't see, but it's a feeling. And so it's kind of the same thing where you talk about the lucid dreaming. I don't really think there's the other side. They always talk about, oh, we're talking to the other side. People have crossed to the other side. I don't really think there is an other side. I think it's all one big fishbowl,
Yeah.
a big one, a giant one.
Yeah, you might be absolutely right. Like, I think we get in the habit of that. And, you know, it's interesting that you brought that up because
Mhm.
in the second book, Nancy, I had a friend. I went to to school with a kid which is in the book, Epiphany. I actually went to that school, and that building literally is across the street.
That's funny. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
and he apparently died like maybe 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And he came to me in a dream.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't really that close with him in grammar school. I mean, we were friends, you know, we got along great, but I don't know why he came, but it was during some of the writing in the book where I was struggling with some stuff. And he came and, you know, I said to him, I was at my high school reunion and he was sitting on the couch in the lounge back by the bar. And I went over and I sat with him and I said, you know, you're in the wrong school. This is my high school. This is not Epiphany. And he goes, no, I know. And I said, we started to talk and I asked him, I said, so why are you here? Why are you at this reunion? Am I dead or am I going to die? And he said, no. And then he said two things. There's no living. And then this goes back to what you were saying, Lisa. There's no living and there's no dead. There just is. And so it goes back to that fishbowl and I was like, oh, okay. And then weeks later, I had to write something and I was like, dude, it doesn't get better than this.
No, I was in a car accident and I died, but I didn't die. In the ambulance,
she floated.
I went to the top of the ambulance. They put the guy who hit me in the same ambulance with me, and I went floating up, and I could see an empty stretcher gurney there, and I could see this old guy in the other one, and he had the nerve to say, "How is that girl or whatever I hit?" He made me so mad. I came back down. No, seriously, he made me so angry that I was a whatever.
I'm not a thing.
That I came back down. I don't think I hit him or anything, but I definitely came back down. And so that's that has opened my mind to things that normally the way I was brought up would be totally closed to. The fact that was I dead or not dead? And they were like, dude, she's gone. And then they're like, no, she's not. I was like, okay. And then I passed out totally and woke up in a hospital with a policeman with his little ticket thing waiting for me to wake up. And he still had his like white helmet on and he started asking me questions. And I'm like, oh, something off.
Wow. Welcome back.
I mean, really, it was like there was no nurses in the room. And here's this policeman now who wants to ask me what happened in the car accident. I was like, wow, wake up to reality. Wow. That has when somebody tells me a story and the critical brain that you're taught steps in to say, oh, that could never happen. The other side of it goes, don't be so quick.
Right. No, that's fascinating though. And I wonder if it was, just like because the guy said something that was rude and obnoxious. I wonder if that's the thing that triggered you to go back to your body.
I
Yeah,
don't
what would have
know,
happened the other way
The
around?
way around, you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it really
because
made
that's what
me
you were
angry.
supposed to do,
Yeah.
was to go back to the body.
Yeah, it was like
It's
kind of your
weird.
awakening. Yeah, it's like it's not your time now. You
Yeah.
know, we
You
just
know,
got to this country. I mean, it was like not
yeah.
even 2 weeks, 2, 3. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't. No, we were further. No, it was really early.
Yeah.
That was pretty. It was like, what the heck? And then some lady called me and told me, your mom's in a car accident. I said, that's not a funny joke, and hung up on her.
Oh, wow.
You
Wow.
know? And it's like my aunt comes to pick me up and she's freaking out, and I'm going, why are you freaking out? You don't know my mom that well. You haven't seen her for years. Why are you freaking out? And she's absolutely freaking out, like a hysteria. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? You know, but it just is very,
It's
those
odd.
things are interesting. And I think it does connect. And I think it's great that you put it in a novel, because it's a way for people to kind of explore on their own, because I always talk about novels being reading is so personal, and no one can tell you no.
Mm.
It's
Well,
you're there and you're co-creating the characters. You are part of that experience, and there's no better way than through a novel where you're imagining, your imagination opens, and that means the devil's going to get you. No,
but it's still fiction is based on nonfiction, because otherwise you couldn't relate to it at
exactly.
all.
Yeah.
You have to recognize or have some way of dealing with fiction.
Yeah, I mean, do you have to do? Yeah, because I mean, if you wrote this 100% exactly how everything is, people are going to go nay, yay. Critical brain would come on before open brain, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And that's one of the things with lucid dreaming too, is like people will go, well, are you sure though it's somebody from the other side? And I said, you know, for me, I say, I feel yes. And nobody can, it's like when you're reading a novel, right, Nancy? So you can relate to certain things in this book.
Yeah.
And Lisa, you may relate to something completely different, but because it's personal. And nobody can tell you you're not having a supernatural experience.
Right.
So, okay, so then if we talk about this, there's religion and then spirituality, and yet, you know, religion is you must do this. I mean, it's kind of, who put the rules? Like,
Who wrote those rules originally?
Bobby, I have to commend you on the Catholic religion, the way you portray the nuns, because Lisa had to go to a Catholic school and she knows. And when you get a chance to read it,
I had a ball. I had a ball in Catholic school. I love Epiphany, as you could tell from book,
because
right?
I could go through and say, oh, well, this like one of your nuns is Lisa, you know, Sister Margaret. There's the nice one, and then sweet. You got the Mother Superior is always a.
I wanted to be a nun.
Yes, she did.
That didn't last very long. That's when I was a little girl, and Nancy taught art to nuns in the Carmelite nuns,
behind
Carmelite sisters in Kenya, and she got blessed by the papal nunciate to be able to go behind the bars.
From Rome, so I could go behind the bars
and teach.
So
and they were like family to me. They held birthdays. They took care of me. They taught me how to garden. And then I wanted to become a nun. I was like, well, this is cool. You got gardens and it's beautiful. I want to be a nun. And then they gave me like a little miniature veil and this whole
the habit
thing. And the sister Mother Superior got so mad, and she cut a big hole in it.
That was the funniest thing. Oh yeah, I know. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, no. She can't have this. It hasn't been blessed properly, and all this
hasn't
stuff.
done this,
so she picked it up and she cut a big hole in it. And I was like,
well, wait, I don't want to be a nun.
No, but now it fits better now.
But then I wanted to be a maid after that. So there you go.
Well, they kind of like let the dogma get into the way of the spirituality.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Jack has a trouble with, right? I mean, that's one of his battles.
Let's back up. Like everyone, Jack is the main character, right?
Yeah.
So give everyone like a little bit of an overview. I know there's a connection, but let's kind of go back for those who haven't read the book. Because I know this is a dangerous part. We get all into it. But give everyone a little bit of an overview of Book of Souls and Jack, who your main character is.
Okay. So, well, the book starts off and it opens with the prologue, which gives the reader the understanding that there's something supernatural happening, right? This is the beginning of Jack's death experience, right? But then the book starts with him being a mid-40-year-old father who loves his wife, loves his children, and the story starts there. And then something happens, which I won't give away to the reader. Something happens, and he wakes up from a coma, and he's 13, and he's back in Epiphany, back living with his father, and they're telling him he will never walk again. And not only does he wakes up and he has a full life with Catherine and his children that just blows him away, because he's devastated. Obviously he can't walk, and he's in the hospital, but he has this love for this woman, and and this whole family, and they're telling him it's because of the brain injury.
Yeah, so there's
And so that's when it gets fun, right, Nancy?
Yeah, because it's like, I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
the poor guy. And I kept putting in my mind, because I always ask authors, like, if this was made into a movie, who would play the character? And I kept, usually I don't fill those blanks in right away. And I just kept going, Jack has to be a young Jack Nicholson to play.
Yeah.
Just, he has to do it. But he has to, because it's so intense, and someone to play a part like that, where even as a kid, he's really intense, and you can't blame him, because stuff is happening that is beyond explanation.
Yeah. It's like, is it a nightmare in a nightmare, or is it a dream in a dream? Which one is real?
Yeah.
Is it his life as an adult?
Yeah.
Is it this part of the story?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you have
how
to
do you write that? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you, because you have to have some grounding, right? But then not. It's like,
Yeah, right. Well, I think that, because it's like started in realism with the shadows, but then you can have fun. And for me, it's like, what I love to do is fall in love with my characters. And Jack, even as a kid, and one of the things on the research I did was, when you have brain trauma, like, he starts cursing, right?
Yeah,
he
I
has a
love
foul
that.
mouth, which
I love it.
yeah, which is, which they say happens because it's like there's something that happened to your brain, and that's like his way of like relieving stress by cursing. But then not only is he dealing with the fact that all of these doctors and psychiatrists are saying that is not real. In order for you to have a fruitful life, you have to give up Catherine and the kids. And he sort of starts this book, the Book of Souls, and puts their names there, because he's like, I'm looking in the mirror and I see a 13-year-old boy, but I know they're real.
Yeah.
And that's where
It's so
that's
bizarre.
where the book starts to take on all. And if that wasn't enough, he's in Epiphany and he's back, in class, and he's looking at the building across the street, and he starts seeing this man watching him as he's watching him, and the man is Casper Greenstreet, and he's a ghost.
a gay ghost.
A gay ghost.
See, that's, to me, bringing that all in there too, because that's the no-no. Was, look what's been going on. I mean, religion, I'm sorry, there's a lot of, gay Catholics, and they didn't want to accept that and I think we're still battling that,
Yeah, but think about it in the 70s, where in like psychiatric terms, that was still considered a mental illness.
It's an illness, yeah.
That's nuts. Are you serious?
Oh no, seriously, it's not that long ago.
Yeah,
that they released it.
I didn't know that part
and you had a choice, and you decided to
oh
be
yeah,
gay,
well,
we're still
battling that.
Like,
I'm not gay, but I'm just saying, we as a society, we're battling that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. So I wanted to be very careful with that character, because Casper was supposed to be a very small character. He was always the ghost, but he was never supposed to have as rich a life, as an artist, and then he takes off with his paintings. So that was something I really wanted to be gentle with, but also make him, as vulnerable and as fragile as he is in life, because of the times and that he was abused as a child. When he becomes a ghost, he is an ass-kicking ghost. I mean, he's not.
It's a payback time.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's not a fragile flower anymore.
No, he's like, oh yeah, watch this.
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting what you say about how he goes. He's like, he sees, it's like the reality versus non-reality, but it's all reality, right? In a way, like I mean, I come on, haven't we all had that moment where you could be in a conversation, you could be driving, you could be in a meeting, and then all of a sudden you are outside your body, kind of like what Nancy went through, but you're outside your body looking at what's going on and going, you need to get back in. It's weird. You're doing two things at once. What's happening? They told you can't, and even as I'm talking about, I'm about to jump out right now. It's like, let's do it. So what is that? I mean, we all have that. I mean, I don't know if that's exhaustion. I don't know if it's just silliness.
Well,
I don't know what it is, but
I think you can send yourself.
have that ability. I know we do.
Yeah, I think you can. And I think it takes a lot of practice, but I pretty much think that you can send yourself mentally somewhere else when you need to and want to. Like you can send yourself, if a situation's bad, you can lessen the trauma by sending your mind somewhere safer.
Well, that's how multiple personality. Now I've got, it's a different name. I'm sorry, but it's how multiple personalities have built up in a human. We get different names, different personalities, the whole thing. And I think that was a part of an escape and management kind of thing, that multiple person. I don't want to say disorder, but apparently it is. But I know it's got a new name, and I want to smack myself for not remembering it. So sorry out there. But it is part of that, right? But then I'll go, it's still, there's that side of me that goes, how far away is that from?
Yeah, but like sometimes it's like to maybe like let go of that judgment of like how far outside, like rather than just do it and be it, right? And I think that's, for me, and where you're saying like, it's like when somebody paints, it's like Casper starts painting and he considers himself a hack. And all of a sudden he does this duality painting where he's painting
I love that.
The person as the world sees them and then who they really are.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he becomes like the mystic painter and he becomes powerful and famous and,
and
so that kind of stuff.
Famous people can't keep they have to go get it done. There's something in them. They have to go and see the alter ego, the real, and so it's a drive to go. But that's the same. I have to be on screen. I have to do this. I have to do that. That's in their makeup. Where an artist that can do what your artist is doing would be such a draw for famous people.
Yeah.
You've got to look up a musician, Mae Edwards, M-A-E, Mae Edwards. Every time she comes on our show, I call her Mae West, and she's fine with it. But she did a 4-piece album and book on duality.
Oh wow.
And she's the saint and the sinner. She's the whole thing. I mean, you would love what she does. She's an incredible Emmy award-winning editor, film editor, TV show editor.
I'll definitely look her up.
An incredible musician. But yeah, just thinking that, I was like, oh, I wish she was on the show right now. She would dig this. That'd be cool. She would. Mae would dig this because I remember when she first came on the show, we were talking about this. She goes, yeah, I mean, here I am, this very quiet, meditative person who's also served in the military, who also turns around and is like, I could have big fancy hair and, glitzy scene, but then I'll sit and play classical piano. It's like this opposite
duality.
Yeah. And
I love that. I'll definitely look her up.
Yeah. Well, just what you're talking, I was like, wow.
Connect
she's just really amazing. And I'll tag her on this too when this airs. But it's
I'd love to send her a book.
Oh God, she would love it. She's incredible. But it's, when you think about the duality part, I believe we're in that, and I don't think it's just dual. And I think that's that part of it, of we as humanity, we're always censoring and going, no, this is how it is, put the chop down.
Mm,
We're always, and I think that's a form of fear. And a lot of our rules and societal laws, which I
It's
call
fear.
BS,
Yeah.
are really
It's fear-based
all about fear.
and
And so
control.
it's like we have to have law and order because we are a bunch of babies.
Hooligans.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
hooligans.
you know, but no, it's true. And I think most of us live our lives in fear. And this, like,
Mm-mm.
not to get back to Jack, but Jack's,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Nancy, you read it. So
Mm.
it's like, it's all about fear. And
Yeah.
the same thing with Casper. And I think what does Casper in is his fear.
Yeah.
And Jack is able to overcome his fear
Ah,
and
Yeah.
take
so,
on the
yeah.
spirit world. Like, you know, not only did he have an after, you know, a death experience, and then they're telling him he never had a wife and he never had children, and they are the most important thing to him and the thing
Yeah.
that he remembers the most, right? This is the love of his life.
Mm.
Then he starts seeing ghosts and spirits, and he
Mm.
realizes I can actually help some of them.
Mm.
It's interesting because he's not afraid, but he's not unafraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's like, he's a very go forward, do something kind of person. And he's very much his own person. Like you wouldn't mess with him, you know,
Yeah.
because he's just not, but yet he has a sensitive kind of, he gets vibes, he's sensitive. So he's not
Yeah.
closed off. He's just
No.
totally open. And that's very vulnerable because if you're totally open, people and things can hurt you. I mean, that's why we build
Sure.
these walls between each other. It's because you can get hurt if you don't have the walls. So
Yeah, you
we
do have to
do
have
that.
some. Because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
not all the spirits aren't always that nice either.
Yeah. But there's a way, you know, I think that
Yeah.
there's a way to control.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story. Like I was in real estate, and I had been in this house a year previously. And so a year later, I came back and I met the same guy and the same owner, and I could tell that nobody had lived there, like they never quite moved in. And I said, so what's going on? It doesn't look like, were you renting? And he goes, no, when we first moved in, we started experiencing oddities. And he goes, then we found out that someone had died in the house. And so I had a few people over and they were like, oh, there's definitely a spirit in the house. And I just said to him, I go, but how do you know it wasn't a good spirit?
Yeah.
Like, why would you immediately be afraid?
Yeah. Because isn't
I
that
think
funny?
we've lived in places that had spirits in there,
Well,
and I couldn't get
yeah.
out of the bed, and it just like I was held down, but I was still breathing, but I couldn't move. And we've done shows with psychics, we've done mediums, actual really good mediums, and
not so good ones.
and then one lady, a nurse comes on and she goes, no, you're experiencing this thing that happens to people when they sleep. Well, it went away as soon as we moved. So I'm like, hello, no. I know what I was feeling, and eventually I'd had all the visions of what had happened in this historic cabin that we lived in. And there was an offshore gambling hall for the mafia. It was a brothel. It was an ice house. The Civil War history. And there were dead people, people buried
on the property.
So there were. It was a Native American crossing ground. I mean, this was a hub of activity, and it was like, holy cow! When you went to bed at night, you never knew what could happen. Things moved. Things.
Lisa, that's a book. That's a book.
No, at one point,
it was crazy.
I'm sleeping with Morris, our cat, and he sleeps on top of the bed on the covers. And all of a sudden he stands up and he's frozen. His eyes are huge. And his hair is so fluffed out that he's frozen and he dives under the covers. And I look up and there's like this blue-gray smoky stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, the cabin's on fire. Because this is it's a log cabin out in the woods. And then it makes a face. It's a man's face, and he smiles and he winks and he goes bye-bye. So I was like, oh man, what did I eat or drink? Come on. So the next day, the owner of the property, I was talking to him and I said, because he told me the lady before was a Native American woman.
Well,
and she had put a coyote head on the door because she said there were spirits. And we went, yeah. Well, now I'm like, hey, there's something. So I
Yeah.
drew the picture of the guy, and he went totally white. I handed it to him. I said, "This is what the guy looked like," and he said, "Oh my God, that's my father." And then he tells us,
And Nancy's an artist, so she can,
that the father's buried on the property. So we're
Oh.
like, "Oh, thanks a lot."
No, but things went on in there. But what was weird is this buzzing.
Weird.
Like when I'd go, like it would take over your body, and there was this buzzing, and I'd be like, "Oh God, here comes the buzzing." I'm like, "Eventually, leave me away, and just go away, leave me alone." And we had a friend who's a medium, and she went in the house. She was like,
Yeah,
and she
she's like,
literally shrank in our
She
like. She's
did.
not shrinking, but she shrunk. So
She-
there's these
she-
weird things that
She went in the
happen.
fetal position
Yeah,
on
she
the
shrunk.
couch and got all tiny.
Yeah,
We're
because there
like,
was
wow.
shenanigans and things had happened there,
Yeah.
and there were kids running around in spirit form,
Yeah.
and so
And
there
there were
was
cold
like
spots.
and things that I were seeing. She
Yeah.
could back up with. There was violence, like I saw a guy with blood in his head, and all these things.
Yeah.
And so I was going through these vibrations. She's like, "Well, you can just put a bubble around, and you can get rid of. You can say no." And I learned to do that. And one night I finally got it right, because you have to really kind of practice and be in tune. And it felt like the warmest feeling I had ever had. And I think it was my Nana holding me and saying, "You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're just amidst other people. It's a different party."
Yeah.
And so it was like the most warm, maternal,
Mm.
incredible feeling. I couldn't, it was really like a warm, loving, like no limits to love feeling that it's incredible. And then it was there. And then we moved because everything was blowing up. Fax machines, computers, everything was blowing up. We moved
coffee
to another
pot.
place. And this was a little mountain town, and to even get a place to live, you were lucky. We moved in, and I think we were moving, so I hadn't set my room up, slept on the couch, and I swear to God, the buzzing came back. I was like, no, but it felt different. This is weird. Found out the person who lived there before us, number one, used to mow his lawn naked. But anyway, he died of cancer.
Doesn't
and he
everybody?
died, I know,
don't know,
right?
man, but it was funny.
But he did have a peacock that we had a peacock there.
Yeah,
but it was cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think I just slept on the couch until things were all set up, and the buzzing came, and I'm like, "No, you didn't follow me," but it was different. Turned out he'd passed away in that room. He had moved in the living room. He had cancer, and that was his thing. And I said, "Look, dude, I am so tired. I need to sleep. I'm going to take care of your house, your garden," which we did. And he went away.
Yeah.
But that was
so once in a while in
yeah.
places I'll get a buzz, and I know that that's not some weird sleeping disorder. It is a true buzz.
Well, that's the
You're
house.
connecting. Yeah, you're connecting to the spirit world.
That's the house where the two cats would go to a particular corner in the house and hiss.
Yeah.
And run away. Every time they went to that corner, they'd hiss. So we're like,
I know, our
this is
listeners must
weird.
think we're totally nuts. We always talk about this on shows.
I hope not,
But
because I love this.
But
So-
this is part of that open.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty about the arts. The arts open minds and hearts and souls. And if we don't, if it's people can listen to our story, our personal story, and go, "Oh, bull. You guys are just, we know you love your wine. You had too much wine. You're up in the mountains. Who knows what was going on up there?" But if it's read in a book, it's like, I wonder, and so I think we need that openness. And I think that's the beauty of what you've done with your book is have openness.
I think
I
a lot
hope
of
so.
people experience things and they're scared to say anything.
Well, that's one of the things with Jack, right? Because he spends he can't go to his father. He can't confide in people. That's why he's finding the people that are older than him, the mystics. And he's like, I can't start talking about, well, there's a ghost in apartment 3C because they're going to look like they want to put me away.
Exactly.
They're going to be like, okay, not only did it fall on his head and he has a family and he's married, but he's also seeing
13.
ghosts and spirits and demons and shadow people. Yeah.
Oh, the great people. I remember working with a lady who was a massage therapist, very spiritual, but there was some dark stuff going on. And she goes, there's great people and they're going to get you if you're not aware of them. And she's massaging me and I'm like, "Oh, right, we're done with this now." The great people, remember? But she says there's soulless people walking around. Those are the great people, these soulless people. that we have to all be aware of these. And I was like, you know what?
But even if that, let's take a minute and
That's
say,
why I
okay,
was just
so
saying
what
the
if that's
shadows,
true?
right?
Right?
What
So
if
what if that
that's
is true? They're just looking for somebody to help them get to the next spot.
Okay.
They're not, I mean,
They're a carriage.
yeah. And
Well-
that is, some of the things that we take on, especially with Jack and Casper, where he's like saying, like, you're not supposed to stay here anymore because first of all, you're not even happy here.
Yeah.
So I think that if she's talking about gray people, for me, the way I approach that is like, I'm not going to be afraid of that because what I'm going to try and do is direct them to the portal that they need to get in and go.
See, now we are tripping out. Okay,
Yeah,
so yeah, I know you got the 2 books, but this
well, you
is
said it was going to be fun, so it is.
well, this is fun. So Nancy, I give Nancy your book, and because I was reading, we're booking, and here's all these things, and I was like, oh, Nancy, you want to, there's a book out there deals with souls. It's called The Book of Souls. She's like, I'll take it, like right there. And so what I do is I give Nancy the books. I don't tell her anything. She doesn't have the press release. She doesn't have websites. She doesn't have nothing. Just read the book. And she starts reading. She says, "What the hell, Lisa?" And I said, "You wanted the Book of Souls. You've got it." And, walking around, she goes, "This is some freaky stuff, man. What the heck?" So she was going around. She goes, "There's someone with 3 nipples." I'm like, "Oh, well, there you go."
I love that.
She goes through this, and so she starts. You won't believe what he's written now. You won't believe what this is going. And I'm like, well, so it's been like one of those things. And, but I think that's really interesting. And then, so today we're going to record, and she goes, okay, well, I try to look up Kevin Moore, and I see there's a writer, the Kevin Moore writer. Is that, am I getting your website correct? That she found you online, kevinmoorepublishing.com.
Yes.
And she goes, but this guy writes Christmas books. Is this
for
the
kids?
For kids. Is this the same person? And I'm like, yes.
That's me.
Yeah. Like, how did you go
I just
from
have
that
to go
to
from
that?
this because I love to do this to her because she's going in pure.
Yeah.
and then
Well,
she's just like,
because when I wrote the Christmas books, well, I'm going to send you a copy too, Nancy, of that because they're not like your typical like sugar candy kind of Christmas stories. They're real, and the people are real. But they're there's big struggles there. But But I kind of like held the reins tighter when I wrote that. Where here I just was like, no. Let's just go to the wall. It's like we were talking about, like not being afraid of what people are going to think of, and bringing these characters in, like, Casper and Peter, who ends up in Bellevue Hospital because he's being haunted by a ghost, and just like letting it all hang out and not holding on to the reins, just riding that horse.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to do with this.
Well, you did it.
That's interesting. I mean, the whole so obviously you've been
there, did he?
This has been brewing for you to be doing for a while. I mean, you've put it out in different forms and different tales and stories, even that's real, but here, so you've been wanting these connections to go out, is what I'm saying, for people to do, because when you go through experiences and open the portal, as you will, and you connect or don't connect, and you start to doubt, and then it's like, oh no, it's just your imagination, which doesn't really actually matter if it's your imagination or real at this point. If it feels good, like, okay, I was talking my Nana, thinking this is my Nana, in the warm feeling. What if it is my imagination and I built this thing up and I feel good? Who cares?
If it worked, it worked.
I think it's cool if it was a true connection. But if, there's that whole, oh, you're just imagining. You've got one of those imaginations. I think people all have imaginations, and it's about us limiting.
Well, how would you like to be the person who has no imagination?
I don't believe that to be true. I think we all have imaginations. They always say, oh no, I'm an admin assistant. I'm not creative at all. I'm like, well, you have to do timing. You have to do, you have to be creative with how you communicate with people. Their creativity is an imagination is key to everything.
Yeah.
And I think that should be deemed one of our 6 senses. So we 7 senses, 8 senses. Imagination, because that is more, your imagination is more of the reality than the other way around. We just keep putting the bricks up.
Well, there's a quote by Einstein, and I'm not saying the quote, I'm just gonna say like what I remember the idea was. And he said, imagination is more important than knowledge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's the only way to move forward.
So you got knowledge. Let's say you've been taught everything and you know everything, but you can't move forward because you can't think outside the box.
Yeah.
You can only do what's been done before.
Do you think there is
Nancy, I feel
really
like you and I are on
higher-
the same like, because I was just thinking of box. I was going to say that, like, you know, like you some of us live in these small little boxes, and then some of us live in a shoe box, and then a bigger box, and then there's no box that can hold you anymore, right? You just you're just going, well, it's possible. Let me explore this.
Yeah, and
it
why
is
not?
possible.
Yeah.
I mean, because who are we to call the shots on something not possible? Why would we do that? We don't know everything. So how can we possibly say this isn't possible? It might not be possible this moment.
Yeah.
But in some space and time, it might be possible.
And it may not be possible for me, but it's possible for you.
Someone else. Yeah.
But see, everybody's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything is co-creative. That's the other part of it. And it's, everything is co-creative. So as soon as like we connect, the 3 of us, we've created something new. The dialogue's a little different than, go somewhere else. It'll be different there. Co-creative. Do you believe in God? Because the one thing people will do is go, this is all devil's work.
Oh, no. No.
You
But
know
Nancy,
what I mean?
right?
No,
I mean,
I gotta bring
it
that up.
doesn't come off that way
the
at
book
all.
is,
No.
he is deaf. Yes, to answer your question, yes, I do. I may not believe in it the way I was originally taught in
there we go. I could
Catholic
tell that
schools early on. And that's what happens with Jack. He is like, you can't tell me, you can tell me about your religion. And it's not just the Catholic religion, it's any religion. You can tell me about your religion, but you can't tell me about spirituality.
Yeah.
Because that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
That's between me and whatever yours is, a higher power, a higher self, the universe, wherever you find that
she can be a she if she wants.
It doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like for me, it's nature. That's my spirituality.
Yeah.
Well, Isaac Newton, we're recording on his birthday, and I was putting quotes up today, and I'm like, oh, I have to be careful if I do this one over here. There's like so many quotes from people, and you're like, careful if you post this. But so many of them came back, here he is, this, genius mathematician, could see what was going on, also astronomy and all of that, and friends with all these great, people, philosophers. And he just said, no matter what, no matter when he started to see how big the scheme is, like how big the world is, there's no way there isn't a greater, higher power, basically. Some called it God, and sometimes he didn't. So I was all stuck in there this morning going, you got to go back to work. But he was like talking about like, there's no way, look at this, just look at it. And I feel that way when out in nature, when you see these tiny intricacies, and then you'll see something so giant and, just humiliating, like you feel so humble and small.
Yeah.
And then it's like magnificent. So it's like when you go out, I think he's onto something with that. When you look at science, and we're always learning more through science. Everything is always changing, but science teaches you. That's where they say that the spirit and the cloth are starting to hold hands more than they ever used to. And science is part of that. I think science is what's actually bridging the gap.
If you think about the fact that we are standing on a huge globe that is actually turning as we stand on it.
We're moving.
Yeah. So how can you not believe in higher powers or science, or how can
the world is round? The world is round.
It's already ridiculous that we're standing on a revolving globe and we don't fall over.
Yeah.
Science explains that.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're at the galaxy on the far end of the universe. Like we found that there's so many more galaxies.
And
it's like,
how
can that just be?
We're going to find even more and more and more. And then we're going to realize
Oh.
how crowded the universe is.
Yeah.
And I refuse to use metaverse. Stop it.
No, no, I'm hopping to Mars today. Would you like to join me? It's going to take me 1 second.
Oh, I would love to go there because I always wanted to go in, like with Star Wars, when they went into the bar. I always loved the bar scene in Star Wars. I want to go to that bar with all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
weird creatures. I really do.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I love that scene. I think it's one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars too, because
Yeah.
I think we're all that.
Yeah.
We've got these bodies, but inside,
Yeah.
that's all of
I really love that bar
I
scene.
think
It's the best.
sci-fi writers are here to prepare us for the next scene.
Well,
Yeah.
to open minds at least.
Yeah,
Open
sci-fi and
minds.
fantasy is there, and
Yeah.
yours is kind of a little bit of all of it. I think you
Yeah.
know, because supernatural is natural, right?
to some of us. To
You
some
know,
of us, it is,
depends. Yeah, it's like whatever level you're at. Have you eaten the habanero yet? You know, the ghost pepper. Here it
Yeah.
is. You know, it's
Yeah.
like we have to learn. Everybody's at a different stage of open and learning, and
Mm.
you know, and it's just fascinating. So cool. Well, this
Yeah.
has been a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I
It
feel
was
like
great.
we're going to beam up, but I do
I-
want to remind everybody in the world, in case you don't know, the world is round.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've heard.
I just don't.
But you can still walk. You won't
No,
fall.
we do not
Yeah,
have
you're not
ice
gonna fall.
walls. I still can't believe like that we have ice walls. Like that part, I never like understood that people, the Flat Earth Society really believes that there's ice walls. We are contained by walls of ice. And I was
Oh,
like, well,
okay.
how does that happen? Like how,
Yeah,
Especially since we're warming up.
I
oh
know.
yeah, well that's
They
it.
have these huge
Oh,
ice cube
That's why we're having
trays
climate change.
that are moved
Oh, wow.
by trucks.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're having climate change just to dispel the fact
Yeah.
that we're not flat earth. Anyway,
Mm.
they're getting silly now, but everyone, again, the book, go get
you
it,
have
Book
to
of
read it.
Souls. I mean,
Mm.
number one, this is such a good title, and it's out now through Books-Fluent. You go to kevinmoorepublishing.com, Amazon, all those great places. Of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Every second Wednesday is our Writers Wednesday with Books Forward. You can keep up with them at booksforward.com. So thank you so much for joining us. It's
Yeah,
been
it's
fun,
fun.
Kevin.
My pleasure. I just want to show you something because you mentioned dust on the earlier.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
Can you see this? It says
a little
ghost
bit.
dust
Oh,
on it.
Oh, ghost dust. Cool.
Pull it back. Pull it. Oh, it went.
It
There
Oh,
says
it
there
is.
it
ghost
is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh.
So
did you trap somebody in a bottle?
no, I just took a little bit of their dust.
He's a collector.
Yes.
Right. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Awesome.
My pleasure.
Yeah.